Hi, you guys. So here today to talk about a really short title, as you can probably read. I'm not going to read it. So for anyone that's not met me before, I've recognised quite a lot of familiar faces here. I've been in the payment industry now for 15 years, doing everything from technical support, product management, product development, sales support, and now I work for Elevon doing this wonderful title, Global Payments Method Development. We'll go through that a bit more. So one thing I want to sort of go through to you guys is everyone I meet has different impressions of Elevon and knows different parts of Elevon. So I just want a very quick sort of who Elevon are, just to give you an update. This is our sort of global view. We trade in about 30 countries at the moment. You can sort of see it's very North American and very European focused. That may change in the future. Very much, if you look at it, 30 countries. We've been going for 30 years, two easy things to remember. 1.2 million customers worldwide, quite heavily in the US on that number. And we process about 5 billion transactions a year at the moment. It's a very exciting area to be in at the moment. We've done a lot of development lately. It's one of those bits I'm going to go through in a minute with you to what we've been doing there. So, I'm going to go through a sort of story, and it may sound familiar to some people, the story we're going through, especially after the first conversation this morning. It's not too different. But very much, it's a story maybe with a slight twist to it, which a lot of our competitors aren't doing, which we're actually trying to do something slightly different to try to get ahead of the game in some areas. So I'm sort of going to take you through our history and what we're doing at the moment. So at Elevon, if you've ever met us, we've got a really strong card acquiring processing. So across Europe, we've got a split level on that. North America are very strong on that. So we've always been strong on card, which everyone has been. But as we find merchants want more things, they want more payment methods, they want more functionality. Predominantly, we've tried to build some, but also we've worked with partners. So you'll find very much our whole philosophy is finding the right solution for our merchants, making sure that we give them the right solution at the right time, recommending who we could work with, to make sure we give the right solution, the best solution, without any, it has to be an Elevon solution, we can actually recommend in that way. I mean, that has worked really well as a consultative approach that we found going through. What we've found, though, is that going forward now, that whole using partners is changing. It's changing for a couple of different reasons. One of them is consolidation. People keep buying the partners we work with. But it's also because we're finding customers and our merchants are now going, actually, we don't want to work with several different partners. We want to work just with you, or we just want one contract, one supplier. So we're looking at ways that we can support that. One of the things that I've started to do is how could we actually offer new payment methods? So very much, we're very strong at card. Alternative payment methods. I'm trying not to use the word alternative because they're not alternative, they're local payment methods. It's a whole terminology where, unfortunately, the card market has called it APMs because it's alternative to card and everyone uses the word APMs. But if you ever talk to a customer who's local in that market, they look at you and go, it's not local, it's a local payment method. So I've got to try and get it in my head a bit more. Yeah, so we actually looked at how we can get to new payment methods. There's a lot of complexity of getting new payment methods out there. It's not card system and things like that. It's very complex and how we can do that. How could we get an offering quickest out there? We actually went through an RFP, and as you can see here, P-Pro, who we're actually talking later on, actually were the successors of that RFP. But the RFP itself wasn't really a normal RFP. So what we decided to do, as I sort of said, I worked in sales support and implementation in the past. I have done through hundreds, if not thousands, of RFPs from customers all around the world looking for services, all the companies I've worked with. And you can tell the ones that have been written by the PSP they work with already, because they even refer to their company, or you get the ones that are standard. But there's half the time, if the merchant relies on these sort of standard RFPs, they're not getting the answers they want. So I took that learning, and actually what I did is, rather than giving out an RFP, I went around to several suppliers. I basically said, this is where we are today, sort of in the countries and that we work in. This is our vision for the next 5 years. What can you do to help us get there? And it was really interesting because what we actually got was a consolidated view from all these suppliers. And I think the funniest feedback we had was from one of the RFP standard people at one of the companies. They came back and said, you're actually making us think for a change. We're not actually just going to give you standard responses. We're actually going to build you basically a proposition, which is what was brilliant for us because we had a whole group of suppliers all come back to us with exactly the same recommendation, which really helped shape our future. And it really helped us identify actually who was our best partner for day one, which was PPRO. So that was that's where we are today. We're sort of just building on that now. One of the things we're sort of looking at is what's the advantages of working with a partner? I know you guys might know some of this, but this is just sort of leading up to where we're going in the future. So PPRO, or any partner we work with that delivers functionality. Normally they've got the functionality, so it's quicker to market to get it there because we haven't got to build it, we haven't got to do multiple things. One contract is a huge advantage. Trying to do contracts with 50-odd alternative payment methods is a long process. Anyone that's done one of those, and the legal contracts is always fun. Even trying to get one across the line can be a complex process. Obviously, the cost. It's obviously, if they've already built the system, the actual connection into that is much lower. And when we look at the complexity, so when I use core systems, I mean our card core systems. So in any acquirer, especially card acquirers, they'll have a boarding system, they'll have a settlement system, they'll have a processing system. They are systems that have probably been around for a while, and actually changing those systems to adapt is a very complex process. So you have to look at, is it worth touching those or not? We'll go into that a bit more in a minute. But there are, unfortunately, some disadvantages of working with partners, and this is various across all partners. You're always limited by what that partner can offer. So if you want to go down a certain route, and that partner isn't down that route, you then even look at whether you're going to do it yourself, or whether you need another partner to achieve that process. Again, that sort of follows on the limited control. You're one of hundreds, if not thousands, of customers that one partner may have. If you're one of the small ones, less likely you're going to have any control. If you're one of the large ones, you could probably steer where they go. So it's very much how you can control those and actually work on that piece. The risk consolidation. So I'll go into this in a second. I'll leave that one for a minute. But the consolidation piece is obviously a risk piece you've got to think about. The other bit is a lot of the partners we work with work on a cross-border selling process. So it's UK selling out to somewhere else. And they're really helpful to try and get you into new markets. But when you go into the domestic market, in France especially, unless you've got that local domestic processing, actually you're not going to be competitive in market. So it's whether you're going for targeting UK businesses selling to another country, which is good, cross-border is easy to support, or you're actually going direct into that market. So whether, like where we are in Poland, whether we want to support BLIK or any of those direct type payment methods like P24 directly out there, where it's more domestic for us and it's more in demand in that way. So it's always interesting to look at that sort of disadvantages and advantages. It's the same with all partners, to be honest. It doesn't matter whether a payment or whether a boarding partner or something like that. There's always this level of risk, and it's how you look at those risks. So I sort of said I'll come back to the consolidation piece. So when we looked at all the payments companies that we could work with to achieve opening up our payments basically to our customers, we looked at working with partners, and obviously we chose PPRO. We looked at some other partners as well. And the interesting thing is when we look back, I sort of said on the other side, one of the disadvantages is consolidation. If someone's doing something good, someone else will want that business. And it's the quickest way to expand your business at the moment is to basically invest in someone else or buy someone else. So I just picked some examples here. So in the payments area, you've got WillPay with Envoy, well that's now Vantiv, so there's even more consolidation there. PayOn obviously with ACI, and then obviously end of last year, PPRO had a really good investment from PayPal and Citibank, and obviously another investment company. We can look at these as really good because they're helping these companies grow, but it also introduces another risk. It introduces that risk that if we look at PayPal and Citi, and even ACI and WillPay, they're all big enough to go, do you know what? I could increase my investment, take the company over totally, and actually, would it affect me too much if I turned off that or made it more difficult for my competitors to use my platform? Could they disrupt the market by going, you know what, we could turn off that today. We can make these payment methods just for us, take away the advantage that other people have got and let us catch up or let us jump ahead of our competitors or give ourselves an advantage. So it's an unlikely risk because I don't think the people that invest in these would want to lose out on that, but it's a risk we have to consider and prepare for because at any point, one of these companies could come off the market, basically. So what are we doing? So if anyone knows about Elevon, we're a very conservative bank and very strong in that area. We have to plan what we're going to do. So what we're actually doing, which is different to what we're seeing in the market with our competitors, is we're building a brand new payment method gateway. So rather than having a direct connection with PPRO, just with PPRO, we're actually looking at building a full payment method gateway for all our mobile, terminal, online transactions, all e-commerce, support all the omni-commerce chat payments we can, and actually building that out in such a way in the cloud to make it obviously expandable in that way, a fully global platform. So this is going to be available for North America, for Europe, and wherever we expand to in the future. It will connect us into banks, it will connect us into local card schemes, cash payments, direct debit, vouchers, wallets, and it will use different ways of doing it. So it will use possibly partners in some cases. So we probably will have someone like PPRO sat behind this for some of the payment methods, but then for some of the domestic methods, we'll have a direct connection. And then for some of those more popular connections where we get lots of demand, we'll have a direct connection for those as well. And what we'll be able to do on the platform is dynamically switch where our merchants' transactions go. So one day it may be, we might find we get a better authorization rate if we go directly. We might find if we go through a partner, we get better authorization rate. We'll be able to dynamically switch and actually route where we're going at each transaction, which enables us to give us full control. And the best thing for our merchants is it's one contract. It's going to be fully integrated into our current systems. So we settle everything to them in one go. And it's Elevon. It's just Elevon. So we're not going to be getting them to sign contracts with other parties. They're not going to get payments from various different people in their accounts. And that's the platform we're building. Sounds nice and easy. I'm not going bald or grey yet, which is, I'm lucky at the moment. But there have been a lot of challenges to where we are at the moment and where we're going. The biggest one, we're a card acquirer and it's not a card number. So if people across any card acquiring businesses, that is a really complex thing for someone to think about. It's not a card number. How does it work with the internal systems we have today? Obviously, a lot of the payment methods, let's say you click on one of the bank transfer ones, you're being transferred away from the payment page or from the site, you're being asked to put your payment details in somewhere else. So we don't get that visibility of the full payment. We're just waiting for it's been successful. So it's a bit of a different process rather than what we do with card acquiring today. And the most interesting we've been finding, you might find this really boring, we are very used to in the card processing environment being able to identify an end user. So a card number is brilliant for us. We can identify an end user really easily. But when you get to an alternative payment method, it's very unlikely you get any of the payment details around that payment method. So it's really hard for you to trace that customer coming back again and again and again. You sort of have to be reliant on device fingerprinting. Any data you get returned from some of the payment methods that helps you identify a customer every time they complete a payment, but it's probably not the best place to do it, or reference that the customer actually knows that shopper. And obviously, you're probably seeing announcements that we're working with Featurespace on their system at the moment, which is really going to be looking at how we can use that in our new gateway, which we're launching later on in the year, to actually help us manage these customers and how we can identify them in that way, which is going to be really interesting. It's been a challenging piece, but it's been really interesting to learn this from a card processing business to actually go, these work totally different to what we're used to. And then on the right-hand side, we looked at how we could actually build this. So again, do we try and do it on our core systems? Do we try to take our card acquiring platform, as a couple of other acquirers have done in Europe, and try and make that work for other payment methods? Working for one of those companies, that didn't work too well. So maybe that's not the best route to do it. It's a complex system. Trying to get changes on those systems is quite hard, and trying to break the card process inside of it is probably a risk you'd never want to take. They are established systems. They've been around probably for a decade in some companies, if not longer. So the chance you want to touch those is probably low. You don't want to touch them at all. They're too high risk to affect. So then you start looking at a new platform. Then you look at where you're going to host that platform. You're going to host it locally. There's a huge cost there. Are you going to host it in the cloud? Which is what we've actually decided to do, which is a development for us, which was really good, actually. What we've got to try and avoid is duplicating what we may have already got in the platforms. So if we've already got a billing system, do we want to build another billing system, the APM system, which then duplicates that? Probably not. The costs go up. So if we start to try and duplicate or build a brand new platform, we might be paying double costs on something because we may have something we've already used somewhere else. And it's the support of that platform. The more systems you build, as we all know, the more support people you probably need to understand how those systems work and actually troubleshoot when anything goes wrong. You hope they don't go wrong, but there's always that risk. So we actually decided to sort of do a mixture of both. We're building the new payment method platform, which obviously gives us all that connectivity and acts as that central hub. But it also acts as the central hub to how to transmission the transaction into our core systems. So we've actually managed to build the messaging in our core systems, which allows us to run through our internal rails, so we can give our merchants one settlement. We can give our merchants one bill. We can charge them really easy. They get that one invoice. And that was one of the big criteria we went through with our sales team and our merchants that we speak to, that they wanted that, which we'll go through a bit more on the next slide, Pete. When we went direct, when we're looking at going direct, so we look across the market, a lot of our competitors use PayOn or PPro and things like that. We already do have direct connections with a number of payment methods across Europe, mainly through acquisition in the past. So in Germany, we have some payment method connection there. In Poland, we have some as well. So we're looking at how we can actually reduce the need to have those separately and actually bring it into this central hub. We're trying to look at how we can improve the individual contracts for each payment method. Very much an education piece. You try and do a negotiation, let's say, with a Chinese payment method. They're probably not going to be as flexible as a smaller local payment method might be. So there's always that interesting thing, how you're going to manage that. So there's an education for our legal team on how to manage those contracts. And there's a learning point every time you do a contract, which I'm sure we're all aware of. An interesting change also was the single message auth. So we're very used to having two-step messaging, one for auth, one for settlement. Most of the APMs, that doesn't exist. It is just a single message authorization. So you send it and you get back yes or no. It's quite simple. Obviously, the need to have settlement. We need to be able to settle those funds to the merchants. We need to be able to make it clear to them, make it so they can reconcile those transactions. And then obviously risk review. So we want to be able to protect our merchants as best we can. We sort of champion ourselves on trying to keep our risk as low as possible for our merchants. We're always trying to look at ways that we can reduce risk, improve conversion on transactions, and make sure that we don't open up our merchants to anything. So these are the sort of needs that came through from a lot of the customers we spoke to when we said we're building this platform. And then internally, something that's come up very, very highly as we've gone through is the need to educate. So I've done this in previous companies where you go in, and most of the sales teams are card acquiring salespeople. They're not e-commerce, they're not payment method salespeople. They sell the card acquiring because to them the card acquiring is the easy bit. But obviously the message you always have to get to the sales team is actually you could just once take all your time selling the card acquiring. But actually, if you sell the e-commerce platform or our new own e-commerce platform, if you sell that platform by itself, you've actually already sold the card acquiring any APMs off the back of that because you've sold the actual platform that it all connects to. So for the merchant, there's nothing more for them to do than that. So you simplify it by selling the one bundle that actually includes everything, really, rather than trying to concentrate on the card. So it is an education, and it is an ongoing education for salespeople to understand that. It does scare the salespeople sometimes when they see we're going to have 100-odd payment methods. How am I meant to know what they all do? So it's all about putting that support behind them to make understand and know who to go to and how to discuss. And I'll be very open. People have been really helpful on that with our education, our sales guys and everything. It's been really good for us. I've learned a lot over the last year and a half of working with P-Pro. Very good to have this conversation. You've got a wealth of knowledge. Operations is obviously an interesting thing. You've got to tell them how you're going to board it. It's a different way of boarding. You're going to go to your operations team and go, you're used to boarding 7 or 8 card types. Here's 50 odd payment methods. They look at you and go, I need like 500 people to do that. That's like, no, you don't. It's an easy process. We're going to make it simple. We're going to make it use the same systems you today, and make sure that we give you all the proper support and training as you go through. So it's just all that communication, education. Obviously support. We're lucky enough we have our e-commerce gateway, which is Converge 2, launching later on this year, will actually be the first line for our e-commerce customers. And we already have terminal support. So when our terminals connect into that platform, we'll have that there. And then our customers. How do we educate our customers which payment method they should be taking? As I said before, with the RFPs, you get people asking you for certain things because their competitors have it. You can always have that conversation with a merchant. You go, why are you asking for that payment method? Oh, because they have it. But do you know if it actually made any impact to them? Some of the payment methods you'll find will cost more than card, especially in Europe. It's quite interesting when we mentioned earlier on about the interchange and pieces like that. We've had a look at that across our whole book, and it's really strange when you go across in North America, you hit Europe and it just drops. And North Americans, it's always an interesting solution that they look at and go, wow, that's just so low. And they just can't imagine that ever happening for them, but it'll be interesting. So you'll find in Europe especially, a lot of the payment methods are more expensive than a card transaction at the moment, unless you get down to the more pence per transaction or euro cents per transaction, where they get better for the larger transactions. But it's been a journey, and it's been a process which has been very ongoing, and it's still going now. So we're aiming to actually get this built for the end of the year. We're using development teams which are enhancing and everything all the time. And there's always a new question that comes up, and we are all working in an, I'm going to say that, agile way, to make sure we give everyone what they need to and involve everyone. So it's been an education, and we're always learning. But yeah, I'm happy to sort of go through any experiences with anyone off this. I can go in for miles into all the technicals. I'm trying to stay away from that from my background, but just give you sort of high level what we're doing and sort of the challenges we've come across, and where we've gone from that. The last slide I want to just go through, I like my Pac-Mans, is where I think the market's going in the future. And I think this lines up to some of the questions we had earlier on, actually. What we're seeing a lot at the moment, we've got a lot of, do you call them fintechs? A lot of small companies opening up, whether they're offering open banking, whether they're offering payment services, whether they're offering fraud services. There are loads of different companies out there, all coming to your door. And you are all probably exactly the same as me. You'll probably get 5 emails a week from 3 different people chasing you, going, we can offer you this. And they'll all be offering you exactly the same service, going, we can get you through the door of this easier. And then you talk to that company and they go, no, don't talk to them. They'll just take ages. And what I think we're going to see is a lot of those small companies being bought by the larger companies. So, for example, if you've got like an open banking solution, we've seen it with Token, you're going to start to see a lot more acquisition of that market. And we're going to start seeing even larger guys acquisitioning those smaller guys that are buying those pieces. So it's going to be very interesting how that market goes forward and how we start to see everything as it moves into the future. I think we'll see more fintechs coming up, more mobile solutions, more fun stuff, which will challenge the banks, because obviously we're not as quick as some of the other guys, but we will try. But I think we'll see a lot more of these smaller companies being bought up for their technology, which is going to be fun. So that's me.